I am Salvador Dali, here at the Dali Museum. I am the greatest artist of the 20th century, known for my surrealism. Surrealism is a type of art that was started in the 1920s with the surrealism writers. Surrealism is dreamlike, your irrational thoughts, images. I would wake up in the middle of the night, dream these thoughts, write them down, draw these bizarre, irrational, dreamlike images. Surrealism. You might see one thing, and you look at it another way, and you see something else. Dreamlike. I am not a madman. I am a genius.
Hello, art students. Mr. Shepard here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about surrealism in this video. And as we all know, Salvador Dali is the most famous surrealist artist of all. So surrealism is known as beyond the real or dreamlike, and it branches from highly abstract to naturalistic renderings, often with personal, unexplainable symbols. Here is the persistence of memory, which is in the Museum of Modern Art in New York. He painted this in 1931. He saw a melted blob of cheese and somehow saw himself. If you don't see it, that's supposed to be him, his eye, his nose, his chin. And then the melting of time. His time is slipping away. Hey students, so we know these magazines, the Scholastic Art magazines. I love them. They're so cool. And on the cover, none other than Dali. This is the disintegration of the persistence of memory, which was done 20 years later, very, very much like his original persistence of memory. But what happened between 1930 and 1950? The war. And we knew much, much more about science. And Dali was just obsessed with math, science, politics, spirituality.
I have always been an artiste. I taught myself as a child how to paint. I won awards when I was a teenager. My father sent me to art school against his better judgment. But I started as a impressionistic painter because in the 1920s I was inspired by Van Gogh and Pizarro. And being from Spain, of course, I was inspired by Picasso, the father of Cubism. But my surrealism is what got me the most notoriety. So surrealism, it's like an iceberg. You see the tip, but if you keep looking, you see more and more and more. And you could look at a painting for hours and hundreds of times and keep seeing more. The double imaging. Once you see one thing and you step back and it looks like something else, like the rocks. I see a turtle. I see a bird. I see a fish. Or the clouds. Again, I am not a madman. I am a genius.
So this is Daddy Longlegs of the Evening of Hope. And the reason this is so popular, and if you've been to the Dali Museum, you will know that this is the very first one. So the couple that bought this painting, Eleanor and Reynolds Morris, this was the first one that they ever purchased from Dali in 1943. And every painting at the Dali Museum was purchased by the Morris family. So that's why this one is so popular. Again, this was done 1940, and Dali had left Europe fleeing his safety from World War II. And you see this little Cupid figure that's sad with his hand over his face. He's looking for hope of a better day. The melted plane, the cannon, all symbolic of war and destruction. Yet the victorious horse and the famous winged victory statue are symbolic of victory. Again, Dali, the melted cheese, He sees himself, and it morphs into his wife, Gala, and she's holding an instrument, a musical instrument, which is melted because there was no money or time for the arts during wartime. But we did sign a peace treaty. You see the inkwells. So there was peace. And the olive branch, olive tree, tree of life. And the insect here is a daddy longlegs. It's a French myth. If you see a daddy longlegs in the evening, it's a sign of hope. So this little figure is hoping for a better life now that the war is coming to an end. I could talk about this for another hour, but I know you have a short attention span. So we'll go on to another. Hello, students. I love this painting. The basket of bread. Incredible. Looks like a photograph. So detailed. He must have painted this with a tiny, tiny little brush. Notice the contrast of the white fabric with the dark background. Over 30 shades of white in that white silky fabric. Symbolic of purity, spirituality, Christianity. And the bread in the basket, also a symbol of God, Jesus' body. Dali was a very spiritual person. Look at that bread, so real. The texture, like you could just go pick it up and eat it. So Dali did this in 1926. He was 22 years old, a senior in college, and this was his senior art project. He submits this. The art professors are in awe of his talent, the realism, and then Dali had to take an oral test. Dali refused this oral test. He told his 3 art professors that he knew more about art than all 3 of them put together. And he didn't need to take their test. Therefore, he was expelled. He did not get his college diploma. His father was furious after putting him in college for 4 years so he could be an art teacher. Dali never had any intention of being an art teacher. He just wanted to paint. But this is a major turning point in his career as an artist, because here he has achieved perfection of realism. So when you look at a piece of surrealism, and you might just think, what's up with that? Dali could paint. Incredible, realistic painter. So once he reached this point, he thought, now what? Most artists never get to this level. So this is a major turning point for Dali. I hope you can appreciate the realism in his incredible technique. Hello, students. This is a very popular painting. Nicknamed as the Abraham Lincoln, it has a much longer title. Gala contemplating the Mediterranean Sea, which at 20 meters becomes the portrait of Abraham Lincoln, homage to Rothko. So we see up close a nude woman looking out the window. Well, this is his wife, Gala. Now, Dali was 72 years old when he painted this. His wife was 10 years older. Does this look like an 82-year-old woman? No, but Dali always saw her as young and beautiful. He did something illegal. He was looking through a science magazine, saw this portrait of Abraham Lincoln, tore it out, glued it onto the painting. So for those of you that have been there, you can see the glue wrinkle in the painting. So it was a copyright violation. But the scientists said that you could do a recognizable portrait of someone with 250 squares. Well, Dali said, I can do it with 120 squares. So he did love Abraham Lincoln, and he got the original idea from the $5 bill. So he did this pixelized version of Abraham Lincoln, his eye, his head, his beard, which you don't really see up close, but when you stand 20 meters or about 30 feet away, you can't help but to see Abraham Lincoln. So really cool. Now keep in mind, There were not such things as pixels when he did this, so he was way ahead of his time, scientifically and mathematically. We keep looking, we go up to the top, we see this big bright circle. Well, that's Jesus on the cross, but from God's view. So we see his arms stretched out, his knees, his feet. And the image to Rothko was a famous modern artist, and he would just paint a square. So Dali is kind of making fun of Rothko because it's just a big red square, a work of art, where Dali has 121 squares. 3 people die in this. Abraham Lincoln. In fact, this big red spot at the top is where the bullet went in Abraham Lincoln's head. Jesus is dying on the cross. And Rothko, the modern artist, committed suicide. So it's about death, immortality, the fading of beauty, and what an incredible double image painting. Last one, my favorite painting of Dali's, the hallucinogenic Toreador. So it's not just surreal. There's pop art, modern art, cubism, realism. Again, another great example of a double image. The first thing we see is Venus de Milo. We know who Venus de Milo is, goddess of love and beauty. Famous statue, which is at the Louvre in Paris. Well, there's not just one Venus de Milo, actually there's 31. It's kind of fun, like a puzzle, to sit back and try to find them all. So let's look at the Venus. This is her fabric, her clothing, her body. Well, there's also a toreador in here, another word for bullfighter. And why a bullfighter? That was the #1 sport in Spain. And we know that Dali was from Spain. So if we look at the green as his necktie, the white of his shirt, the little circle is the button of his shirt. This shadow is his chin, lips. Underneath the shadow of her breast is under his nose. His head is tilted to the side, his cheekbone, his beret, his hat, and the eye. Her head is the eye. And actually, if you look up close, there's a tear coming down because somebody's going to die in a bullfight, either the bullfighter or the bull. Speaking of the bull, here's the bull, the snout, the eye, the horns, the sword going into his heart. And this is Gala at the top. She's sad. She did not like bullfighting because she was an animal activist. So he's painted her looking sad. And this is Dali as a little boy at the bottom. And as a little boy, he had a fear of bugs, ants, grasshoppers. So he's facing his fears by putting these big monster bugs in here. A little cubist Venus de Milo in honor of Picasso, someone who greatly influenced Dali. And there's so much more that I could tell you about this painting, but you just have to go see it at the Dali Museum. I've been hundreds of times, and I see something in this different every time I look at it. So again, it's my favorite, the hallucinogenic Toreador. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this little video about Dali and surrealism. Take care.
I hope you come visit me at the Dali Museum here in St. Petersburg. Have your art teacher bring you, or your parents, and learn to look at art in a different way. Learn to look with an artist's eye. There is no such thing as perfection, so have no fear. You'll never reach it. I'm almost perfect, but enjoy my art at the Dali Museum.